Here is the first 6,000 plus words from the text provided. While others are busy spraying, sprinkling, and fussing over every leaf, the Amish are quietly building some of the most beautiful pest-resistant gardens around, and they're doing it without a single chemical in sight. For the Amish, the idea of grabbing a pesticide is about as likely as them swapping their horse-drawn buggies for a shiny new SUV. Instead, they lean into the power of nature itself. It's a matter of balance, of trusting that nature knows a little more about bugs, plants, and dirt than we might think. Now, why avoid chemicals in the first place? Besides the obvious fact that chemical sprays are harmful to the environment, the Amish believe they disrupt the whole ecosystem. In an Amish garden, it's all about harmony. You won't find them at odds with their surroundings, fighting against nature. To the Amish, a garden is a mini community where each plant, bug, and patch of soil has a purpose. The idea is that a balanced ecosystem makes plants healthier, less prone to disease, and better at defending themselves. You could say that instead of armor, Amish plants wear layers of well-prepared soil and nutrient-dense defenses. For them, pest control is more about working with the garden rather than turning it into a war zone. The Amish approach to gardening doesn't begin with the seeds, and it sure doesn't start with the pests. It all starts with the soil. For them, healthy soil is the bedrock, the absolute foundation of a thriving pest-resistant garden. You can't have strong plants if the ground beneath them is weak and poorly prepared. And much like a house, if your foundation's cracked, things are going to fall apart quickly. Amish gardeners know that, which is why they pour so much energy into creating nutrient-rich, well-balanced soil. They don't use fancy fertilizers or chemical soil additives. Instead, they stick to what's tried and true: compost, natural manure, and careful soil management. The Amish are experts at composting, and they see it as the best way to build soil fertility without relying on chemical shortcuts. When you compost, you're not just feeding the soil, you're improving its structure and making it more resilient to pests. Compost helps maintain moisture, adds beneficial microbes, and creates an environment where plants can grow strong enough to naturally defend themselves against pests. It's a little like providing your plants with a health drink every day; they're just better equipped to take on whatever the garden throws their way. The Amish are big on using natural manure too, carefully applied to avoid over-fertilizing. This practice helps build healthy organic soil that stays alive with bacteria and fungi, creating a mini ecosystem right beneath the surface. And because they don't use synthetic chemicals, they maintain the soil's balance and diversity, allowing plants to thrive without artificial crutches. Let's not forget the Amish's meticulous attention to the way soil is prepared. They take time to till and aerate the earth, often by hand, to ensure it's loose and well-drained. No need for machines or additives here, it's all about sweat and patience. Amish gardeners take a slow and steady approach, ensuring that the soil is ready for planting by taking the time to get it just right. If you've ever tried to grow something in compacted, dry soil, you know it's like trying to build a sandcastle in quicksand; it just doesn't work. The Amish know that if the soil isn't right, pests will start to thrive, and your plants will struggle. They can spot signs of poor soil from a mile away, and trust me, they're not about to plant anything in soil that isn't up to scratch. Now that the soil is ready to go, it's time to talk about the seeds themselves. Because what good is all that healthy, rich soil if the seeds you plant aren't up to the task? The Amish know this well and take their seed selection seriously. They're big fans of heirloom seeds, but what really sets their method apart is how much thought goes into choosing varieties that naturally resist pests and diseases. For them, it's about finding plants that are tough enough to handle the local pests without needing a chemical shield. The Amish don't just grab any old seed packet at the store. No, they've been saving and swapping seeds for generations, carefully selecting the best of the best. Over time, they've found varieties that naturally fend off pests or diseases, making life much easier in the long run. Some varieties are naturally resistant to certain bugs like aphids or beetles, while others are bred to resist diseases like blight or powdery mildew. For example, the Amish love planting varieties like red Pontiac potatoes or Brandywine tomatoes. These are old-school, tough plants that have withstood the test of time and, let's face it, the occasional bug attack. And these seeds aren't just resistant by chance; they've been chosen specifically for their ability to fight off pests. It's like they've gone through the garden's own version of boot camp, making them stronger and better prepared. What's even cooler is that because the Amish save their own seeds year after year, the plants adapt to local conditions, making them even more pest resistant. Some varieties, like certain types of beans, actually repel bugs with their scent or texture. Imagine a garden full of plants that the bugs don't even want to bother with. It's like the Amish plants are saying, "No thanks, pests, this buffet is closed." And when you get seeds that are naturally pest resistant, you're not just getting better harvests, you're also cutting down on the need for constant intervention. Less spraying, less fuss, and more time spent enjoying the fruits of your labor. It's a win-win all around. Of course, sometimes you'll find that even the toughest seed varieties need a little help, and the Amish know that too. They'll often plant a mix of pest-resistant varieties along with some that are more vulnerable, creating a balance that naturally reduces the chance of pests overwhelming any one part of the garden. Now that we've got pest-resistant seeds in the ground, it's time to talk about giving those plants some space to breathe, literally. The Amish aren't the type to cram their gardens full of overcrowded rows, hoping for the best. They understand that plants need their own room to grow strong and healthy, which is where thinning comes into play. Here is the continuation from where the text left off. Thinning might sound simple, but it's a big deal for the Amish. They believe in the philosophy of, if you want your garden to grow well, don't let it get too packed in there. It's like hosting a party, you don't want the guests to be elbowing each other for room. Similarly, when plants are too close together, they end up competing for sunlight, water, and nutrients, making them weaker and more susceptible to pests. By giving each plant its own space, you're not only promoting better growth but also making it harder for bugs to hide and multiply. Think of it like this: when plants are overcrowded, pests have all sorts of nooks and crannies to hide in, which makes them harder to spot. Thinning plants opens up those areas, making it tougher for insects to settle in undetected. Plus, with better airflow, the plants stay drier, which helps prevent mildew and mold from creeping in. The Amish see this as a way of helping the plants grow into their best selves. No stress, no competition, just room to stretch out and flourish. And the Amish are known for their aggressive approach when it comes to thinning. They won't just remove a couple of leaves here and there, they're proactive. If a plant is taking up too much space or has too many leaves, off they go. It's all about getting rid of the extra baggage, even if that means cutting back more than you might feel comfortable with at first. It's like giving the garden a good haircut. Sure, it might look a bit bare at first, but it'll grow back stronger, healthier, and better equipped to handle pests. In the Amish garden, thinning is more than a task, it's an act of care. It's about respecting the plants and giving them the space they need to shine. And trust me, when you see those plants thriving, you'll be glad you made the effort. It's a little work up front, but it pays off big time with fewer pests and bigger, healthier crops. After ensuring the plants have room to breathe and a solid foundation beneath them, the Amish know that timing is everything when it comes to watering. While many people might wait until the evening or midday to tend to their thirsty crops, the Amish take a different approach. One that's early enough to catch the worms still yawning but not too late to cause trouble. Watering at sunrise isn't just a quaint tradition, it's a smart strategy for keeping pests at bay. Now, I've always been a bit of a night owl, so the idea of getting up at the crack of dawn to water the garden sounds like a challenge, but there's some real sense in it. When you water early, you give the plants the chance to dry off by the evening, which helps prevent mildew and fungal diseases from taking hold. Plus, since the sun is still low, the water doesn't evaporate too quickly, ensuring the soil stays moist for longer. It's like giving your garden a refreshing morning shower before the heat of the day sets in. But here's the kicker: watering in the morning also keeps those pests guessing. Bugs like aphids and beetles tend to be early risers, looking for any excess moisture they can find to settle into. If the soil is already dry by mid-afternoon, they're less likely to find a nice little spot to munch on. Even pests that prefer moist environments, like slugs and snails, find it harder to move around when the soil dries up early in the day. It's like setting up a natural alarm system that keeps the critters on their toes. Now that your garden is off to a solid start with healthy soil and the perfect watering schedule, it's time to get serious about keeping pests away. This is where the Amish show their true knack for resourcefulness. Instead of reaching for chemical pesticides, which can harm the environment and their gardens, they turn to nature's own remedies. One of the most trusted tools in their pest-fighting arsenal is neem oil. Neem oil is derived from the seeds of the neem tree, which grows primarily in India, but it's found its way into Amish gardens for its impressive ability to keep pests at bay. What makes neem oil so effective is that it works not just as a repellent but also as a natural pesticide that can interrupt the feeding and breeding of bugs like aphids, spider mites, and even whiteflies. The Amish mix neem oil with water and a little soap, then spray it generously on their plants, paying special attention to the undersides of leaves where pests like to hide. It's a clever way to deal with bugs without doing any harm to the plants or the planet. Then there's garlic spray, which smells about as strong as you'd imagine, but that pungent aroma is exactly what the Amish love about it. Garlic's natural ability to repel beetles and caterpillars makes it a must-have, and let me tell you, it works wonders. The smell might send your neighbors running for the hills, but it'll have the pests steering clear of your garden. For those truly tough garden invaders, the Amish have an even spicier solution: chili pepper spray. If garlic doesn't get the message across, the heat of chili peppers will certainly do the trick, sending beetles, ants, and other critters packing. Just be careful where you spray. If you're not careful, you might end up adding a little extra zing to your salad by mistake. And let's not forget the classic soap spray. It's not just for cleaning dishes. Simple soap mixed with water is another weapon in the Amish arsenal. It works to dissolve the exoskeletons of many insects like aphids and spider mites, which makes it a handy, low-cost tool for Amish gardeners. They know that a little soap goes a long way in keeping pests from taking over their crops. After all those sprays and natural repellents, you might think the Amish have covered every angle to protect their gardens. Here is the continuation. But they've got one more ace up their sleeve: diatomaceous earth. It sounds a little fancy, but trust me, it's a game changer for any garden that's serious about pest control. Diatomaceous earth is a natural powder made from the fossilized remains of tiny aquatic organisms called diatoms. When ground down, it creates a fine, chalky dust that does some serious damage to pests but leaves plants untouched. The best part? This dust doesn't harm the plants one bit, and it's as natural as your backyard dirt. What it does to pests, though, is a whole different story. When insects like ants, beetles, or fleas come into contact with it, the sharp edges of the diatomaceous earth particles puncture their exoskeletons, drying them out and eventually killing them. It's a bit like a tiny wall of defense, one that bugs can't easily breach. Applying diatomaceous earth can be a bit of an art form, though. Amish gardeners know that it's most effective when it's applied dry, and the key is to cover all the areas where pests are likely to crawl, especially along the base of the plants. You don't want to overdo it either, just a light dusting will do. Too much, and you might have a garden that looks like it's been hit by a fog of white powder, which could be fun for Halloween but not ideal for plant health. For younger plants that might need a bit of extra protection, the Amish use diatomaceous earth generously, especially in the early stages of growth. And because diatomaceous earth is all natural, it's safe for both plants and pollinators like bees, which is crucial for any healthy, thriving garden. If you've ever used diatomaceous earth yourself, you know it's not the cleanest job in the world. It gets everywhere. But here's the beauty of it: it works so well that it's worth the dust cloud that follows you. The Amish know this all too well, which is why they'll often go the extra mile to apply it with precision, ensuring that pests are discouraged from making a home in their gardens. With diatomaceous earth in their toolkit, it's no wonder their crops stay pest-free and chemical-free. After all the sprays and dusting, there's one more crucial step in the Amish approach to pest control: keeping those weeds in check. It's easy to overlook, but to the Amish, weeds are more than just an eyesore. They're a hiding place for pests. A well-maintained garden doesn't just look good, it's a fortress, and weeds are the invaders. By taking a proactive approach to weeding, the Amish make sure that pests don't have a chance to set up shop in the first place. They don't wait for the weeds to take over, they tackle them regularly, making weeding part of their daily routine. Now that we've got the basics of garden cleanliness down, it's time to step up our game with some good old-fashioned traps. And when it comes to trapping pests, the Amish have got some seriously crafty methods. They've mastered the art of catch and release, only they're not releasing the pests back into the garden. They're sending them packing far, far away. No bug wants to hang around after it's been caught by one of these homemade traps. One of the most common tools in the Amish trap arsenal is the sticky trap. These work much like the ones you might see in your basement, but instead of having to buy them at a store, the Amish make their own. You can use anything from old jar lids to bits of cardboard and then smear them with something sticky like molasses or honey. Once the pests land, they're stuck. I tried this myself once just to see how effective it was, and let me tell you, I'm pretty sure I caught more bugs in one night than I did in the entire season of gardening. These traps work wonders for things like flies, beetles, and other crawlers that love to make a meal of your plants. If you're looking for something a little more sophisticated, the Amish also use vinegar traps. And these don't just trap pests, they also double as a cleaning product, so you're getting two benefits for the price of one. You take a jar, fill it with a little vinegar, apple cider works best, but any type will do, and cover it with some kind of lid that has small holes in it. The sweet smell of the vinegar attracts pests like fruit flies, who come in for a sip but end up meeting their fate. It's like a tiny no-waste extermination service. The vinegar scent also lures other unwanted insects, including ants and gnats, making sure your plants stay free from the tiny critters that usually go unnoticed. One of my personal favorites, though, is the Amish method of using beer to catch slugs. While we're all familiar with beer being enjoyed by people, it turns out slugs are big fans too. The Amish, being the resourceful folks they are, take advantage of this by setting up small containers filled with a bit of beer. The slugs come for the drink and then, well, let's just say it's a one-way trip for them. They fall right in, never to crawl back again. Not only is this an effective way to keep your garden slug-free, but it's also an affordable solution that doesn't require fancy, expensive traps. All you need is a leftover bottle of beer and a little time. After trapping the pests, sometimes it's just about inviting the right neighbors to your garden party. The Amish have figured out that while pests can be a problem, the solution might already be buzzing right around the corner. The secret? Beneficial insects. These little critters aren't just part of the food chain, they're the garden's personal security team. Instead of using chemicals to wage war on pests, the Amish turn to nature's own defenders, ladybugs, lacewings, and even predatory beetles. Ladybugs, or as I like to call them, the garden's tiny superheroes, are one of the Amish's most trusted allies. They love feasting on aphids and can wipe out a colony in no time, leaving your plants safe and sound.